everybody. Thank you for meeting me here. A little bit about me, real quick. So, my past decade has been interesting in terms of professional experience. I'm a professional in finance, so I don't know how I ended here. But it turns out that I started in the fast-paced financial sector in the Colombian Stock Exchange. I was a very business-driven professional, but eventually I started, making my way into the data world and, into a very competitive space. But going from the financial sector into the customer care industry, which is where I'm at right now as a Senior Director of Business Insights, today I want to bring you a little bit of my experience and the lessons that I've learned during this journey. So this talk is not going to be very technical as you have seen in the previous talks. I hope that this will enlighten everybody that is here, that is working in the data world and that are maybe struggling with some of the things that I've struggled with in my journey. As Carlos mentioned, I'm a professor too. That's something that is truly like one of my biggest passions. I'm currently teaching a course, a data science course, and also a financial risk course. And basically, I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to shape all these new data scientists and finance professionals that are coming to the world. And, I really am very critical about how we teach data science and how we can shape better all those professionals that are coming to the corporate world, which is right now in a data-driven transition. So that's where that long title that you just saw for my talk, where it comes from. So I want to tell you a little bit of my journey just as a context and why I'm giving this talk today. So everything started when I was doing my master's in quantitative finance back in 2015. Again, I was just a finance professional. I didn't have any programming background, and I decided that it was a great idea to create an algorithm that would find price discrepancies between the Colombian and US markets in low latency, which is called as well as high-frequency trading. So what this means is that I had a 500 million records data set, and there I was, doing my first steps in programming, doing my beautiful algorithm of 1,000 lines and a dozen for loops in order to process all these huge data sets. But eventually, it was just like I was drowning doing this. And back in 2015, big data was not a big deal in Colombia yet. Maybe most of you were more familiar with that, but at least in the company where I was working at, it was not, it didn't have that big traction yet. And I was like, there must be, a better way to process all this data instead of what I'm doing. So I was fortunate enough to have this path in my first company where I was, very business-driven, but at the same time, I was very involved in all the technical solutions. So that gave me that unique mix that eventually I understood that it was so useful for being a data scientist. All that domain knowledge, all the technical and, understanding of the data architecture of a company, really, really deep. But then I decided that I wanted more. I was very self-taught. I wanted to pursue something more formal. Now, this looks like an advertising for my master's degree. It's not. Nobody's paying me for that. It's a really great program, but that's when I went to Spain to pursue my master's in business analytics and big data. And it was a very enriching experience. I had the pleasure to study with people from around 60 different nationalities. I was able to master and, really, really embrace all those concepts that I was missing. And just everything, the whole picture, I was able to see it and be able to connect what I had, my domain knowledge, my stats knowledge, and all that numerical foundations that I had, everything made sense now. So I was really excited when I came back to Colombia to my position as a data specialist first. And then, it was I hit a wall so fast just because I was so excited, to come to my company, and everybody, like executives, my colleagues were like, oh my God, what are you bringing to us? What are you bringing so new to this company? And I was like excited, like all the fancy algorithms, all those data visualization projects, like I wanted to do so many things. But the fact is that it didn't resonate because the answer that I got from my boss at that time was, Catalina, I need you to monetize data. That's what I want you to do. And I was like, okay, we all like money is fine, but like, are we talking about cost efficiencies, process improvements, customer loyalty, any business case that we can work on? And it was like, no, just monetizing data. And this was really frustrating to me. So, all those fancy dreams that I had, like, it was not going to happen. And eventually I became really frustrated. So I think that many of you can relate to this because it's just like those high expectations from executives. And that's going to continue. We just need to know how to navigate them. And basically, like all those hard skills, all those technical skills that we really need to champion, those are not enough for a data scientist, for a data analyst, for any data professional. You need to be thinking of other ways and other skills that are so necessary. And that's why, when I realized this, it's like, okay, after several months of being very frustrated, I realized, like, my role is not only about all the fancy things that we were told that data scientists do. It's more about negotiation. It's more about business cases, very business driven. Like, never forget about the business outcome because it's so easy for us that we are so, number driven, and it's like we get lost in the numbers. And we love to talk about it. But then it's just like it doesn't resonate with the audience. So with all of this and this context, this is what I want to bring to you today. Some strategies for preparing for the future for all those new and existing data professionals, because it's going to be harder for anybody who hasn't had any previous experience and being an expert at a domain specifically. It's going to be harder. So this is what it is, and this is the context that we have to work in. So basically, let's talk about some of the challenges that any data professional has to face. So let's talk first about that mythical creature. I don't know if any of you have seen it, that one that is so rare and has magical powers, the data scientist. The true data scientist, as they told us, because to be a true data scientist, you really need to master and to have that mix of statistical foundations and those programming skills, but also the domain knowledge. And I will go back to that domain knowledge that we leave aside or we oversee so many times. That data scientist is also able to translate data insights into actionable items that are going to be business strategies. And they also are a bridge between that technical team and business team. So that's what we are expecting from a data scientist, But the truth is that to reunite all those three group of skills is so difficult. Let's think about a business case related to fraud detection. Are you able to find a true expert in fraud, like from all the legal stuff, from the processes, from what are the different techniques that are being used, what are the implications of the fraud? Like, are you able to find an expert who has 10 years experience just in the business, but also can master all those other skills? Probably yes, but it's going to be really difficult. So the fact is that we usually need to make compromises when hiring. We need to be like, what do I prefer to teach to this person? About fraud, or about machine learning, or about statistics. And I think that statistics and domain knowledge are the skills that are overlooked the most. And this enters or gives the perfect mix just to enter in a dangerous zone. So you see that danger sign, incomplete or irrelevant solutions. This concerns me a little bit more than overfitting. Like we're so scared of that word. But to me, to create something that is irrelevant for the business that can be technically sound, is well done, it's predicted, high accuracy, but then it's like it's irrelevant. You're solving something that nobody needed to solve. Or, you're just solving for a process that maybe was done once a year. And then it's like you're so happy with your model, but it's not giving anything to the business. So that's more dangerous to me. Now, if we overlook statistics, so we're going again into another dangerous zone, just like misinterpretation of data. Are we finding true insights, or are we just like seeing what we want to see? And I find that it happens so often. Like, people are so focused on the machine learning algorithms that they forget the basic stats, the foundation of every model. So it's so easy to find somebody that will, talk from beginning to end about on a specific algorithm, but they won't be able to perform not even a statistic summary, So it's like that's what worries me as somebody who is, in the data world, but also I have my team. So I'm concerned about helping data professionals to get where they want to be, but also I'm concerned about hiring and about recruiting. So that's a reality that we have to live with. And what can we do about this? And here I'm including two parts. So for data analysts and data scientists, but also for team leaders. And basically those strategies are saying the same, but just like, please know that if you're a data professional and nobody is giving you this is something that you should be looking for. So first, what if we have a person who's not a domain expert? We don't have that fraud detection expert. So we need to teach them about fraud. So the first thing that we can do as team leaders is create those environments that are going to foster cross-collaboration between teams. Have that subject matter expert. Have that person from the product, sales, operations department to really be immersed with all the data scientists, data analysts, etc. So as a team leader, you should be doing that if you're lacking that knowledge in your team. But also, if you're a professional, you should be looking for that. So how do I do that? Well, you have to engage with your stakeholders because they won't do it. They don't know that you need this. So, like, everybody is assuming that you have this. Remember the unicorn. And I'm bringing this challenge just because I think that it has been so harmful because everybody expects magic from the data scientist. And sometimes there's no magic. There are good solutions. There are great solutions, but eventually, like, you'll get there. But you don't have to go for the fanciest thing at the beginning. Now, promoting continuous learning and also from the data professional side, just like look what you need for. And not only all that open source resources and all those online resources that we all know that exist for programming skills, for data science skills. I'm talking about domain. So go into the business, go do your research and look for resources that are going to help you to master that knowledge. And finally, prioritize quality and accuracy. So when we're saying establish rigorous standards, this is something that can be from the statistic foundation that we want to have for our team. So it's like, how are we going to proceed with this analysis? What are we expecting from that? Really be clear as a leader what you're expecting from your team. And let them, experiment, let them discover any patterns. But I think that quality settings needs to come from the team leaders and need to be engaging everybody so that they compel with that. Also, documentation. I know nobody likes to talk about documentation sometimes, but that's something that is going to improve quality. Now, second challenge that has to do with the unicorn. So, the hype about data science. Insights is the new black. Everybody uses the word insights. And you think it's like for everything. And I'm always, I'm a teacher, so I'm like, is it really an insight? Is it new? Is it interesting? Is it, relatable to the business? Is it actionable? Like, I start doing my checklist, and it's like, oh, but it's interesting. And I have another one from some of my internal stakeholders when they tell me, Catalina, I have a call with my client next week. I need to wow my clients. That's what I get. I need to wow them. And I'm like, okay, let me help you, but what are we looking for? Customer satisfaction. Are we looking for process efficiencies? Are we looking for any issues that you're having with your carriers in the retail space, for instance, et cetera? So this is what I get from them. But the fact that, this is the hype, we need to really involve our stakeholders. You really need to make them accountable of the information that you need, because you always need context. So when you're doing any data analysis, it's like, I have my numbers, I have my results, I see the variance, I see the outliers, I see many things that are interesting to me. But are they going to be actionable? Are they going to be interesting for my client? Are they going to be relevant? That's the question that you cannot solve on your own. That's where you need your stakeholders, and you need to involve them. So if they don't want to be engaged, you have to think of strategies that are going to be like, hey, I'm finding this. What do you think about this? Is this interesting? Is this new? Do you care about this? And make them think of things that you cannot imagine, like how well it goes. It's just like some of these techniques are it sounds so basic to me now that I'm saying them, but it's just like really embrace them. Because when you really have a valuable relationship with your stakeholder, that trust is built, things change. So, what can we do about this? We're talking about communication and collaboration specifically. But that continuous education for the executives, and I'm going to be talking about this later as well. And this is not like you have to teach data science to your stakeholders. It doesn't mean that. It's just that continue to educate them at least on the most basic aspects of data. Data cleaning, what happens if we don't have a data point, what happens and where the effort comes from, because we have these high expectations that we need to learn how to manage them. Set realistic expectations. It's just like, you want me to wow your client in 1 week, I will manage those expectations a little bit. Maybe I'll build something cool, but probably that's not going to be the case. I want to talk about the second challenge that we have, and is our audience. So I don't know if you ever felt that. Like, you're just giving a presentation and you're so excited and you're presenting your visualization and everybody's just like, what are we seeing here? And then, it has happened to me, I'm like, why can't they see what I'm seeing so clearly? Maybe it's my issue. I'm not, actually changing my language. I'm not setting the correct, visualizations. I'm not helping my audience to get there. So it doesn't matter if we do the best model, if we have the best accuracy, if we get the best insights that we think of. The fact that if we cannot close this gap between our audience and our data team, then this is not going anywhere. So basically, read the room and understand your audience level of technique, skills. I don't think that you should go again just like explaining thoroughly every part of your model unless they are asking to, and they have that technical acumen to be able to talk about this, But basically, when we are not doing this, we're wasting resources. Another thing that concerns me, when we have to take something that just like the audience didn't like, nobody enjoyed it, nobody understood it. And honestly, this is demoralizing for a team. This is demoralizing for anybody who's presenting something that they spent lots of hours, days, weeks, and then it doesn't resonate with anybody on the audience. So as a team leader, again, you should be worrying about this. Second, you'll create stakeholder resistance. Just because what you're saying, it doesn't make sense to them. So you're losing credibility. You're losing traction with them. You're creating these strained relationships that are just going to deepen all this situation. And for instance, if you're on consulting, you're just losing competitive edge if you're not able to give your message effectively. And sometimes 10 minutes is all that you have. So you cannot prepare an explanation, a background of 40 minutes about a neural network or about something that you are doing in the back end. So first thing that I consider, everybody thinks that they're good at, but not necessarily storytelling. Such an important skill for a data scientist, for a data analyst. And is to be able to create a compelling narrative and be able to share those insights, but first giving context, then crafting that compelling story, and finally highlighting all those key insights, and most importantly, giving recommendations. That happened to me a lot at the beginning. It was like, cool, interesting, awesome, love it. What do we do with this? And I'm like, oh, I forgot the recommendations. You need to close with that. It's like, again, that's why we need to be fully aware of what are the processes, what are the business problems that we are seeing. Now, get feedback mechanisms as well. So sometimes it can be scary, just to ask how did you like my last visualization? How did you like my model? Maybe that's not it. But basically, really look for feedback and understand if what you're presenting to your audience is actually resonating with them. Maybe the answer is going to be yes, and it's going to be a positive response, but you should be prepared to manage all of that. And finally, emphasize impact and actionability. What if, instead of talking about model accuracy as the end or as the main goal of something, you talk about increasing sales, cost reduction, customer retention in X, Y%. The way that you connect your data insights with the business outcomes, that's the only way that you are going to get that traction with them. So this happened this week, and I'm going to walk you through this really quickly. Somebody on my team didn't do this specific visualization, but they were working with some customer feedback, and they were trying to show to the clients what were the main topics, what was the sentiment around it. Word and bearing spaces are a great tool. However, when we start getting questions like, hey, I love this. What do the X and Y axis mean? And so my analyst asked me, what do I respond to them? I'm talking about operation leaders in a call center. So they're excellent at managing their operations, but how do I explain a word embedding space to a person in operations? It's like there are so many abstract concepts about this behind all this chart, all that technical jargon, all that high dimensionality, cousin similarity, all those different terms that you need to cover to actually explain what is this. Many of you might be familiar with the party analogy. That's one way that you can explain it, So it's like we're at a party, everybody's having a good time, but then you see that people are just chatting in their groups. And if you were able to put on some glasses and then look at how the words that everybody's speaking have a different color depending on the sentiment they have. So you would see all those words like fun, amazing, cool, just like grouping very closely to each other, and they have these cool vibes. But in the other side of the room, you might have all these bad, ugly, awful words, So they are not enjoying the party, not so cool vibes. So basically, when we are talking about customer feedback, I was saying to my analyst, maybe you just, you can use this analogy and then show them that at the end, what we are having here is just the reunion of those words that are frequently happening together, that are describing those important topics that we are seeing and the sentiment that's behind all of those interactions. That's one way that you could explain it, but again, read the room. If they are asking you via chat, I don't encourage you to write them, like 4 paragraphs, given all the party analogy. So just look for what's the best way or tool or strategy that you can use to involve them enough, for them to understand what you're doing without going into unnecessary detail. Now, data visualization is another of those skills that most people think they're great at. Remember, data viz is not charts. This is not pretty charts. Data visualization is something that should empower your narrative, make it easier for your audience to understand those insights. And I wish I could speak like for an hour about best practices of data visualization, but this is not the goal for today. But just remember that this should be your main tool to actually do that storytelling very effective. Finally, our last challenge, which is the chaotic data landscape. And again, this is going to be different for any one of us, because maybe we're working for a company that has everything figured out, like they have these beautiful databases, there's no missing data, there's no need to clean data. Like that rarely happens. How we usually work, it's just like, trying to look in a jungle of spreadsheets, MySQL servers, cloud computing, storage, and then just like everywhere. This is what we actually have to deal with. And again, it can be a little bit frustrating and worrying for somebody who has just entered to this world. So what is my advice? Think that there's a silver lining here. And I tell you this by experience. Sometimes those companies that have the data the most organized way that you can think of are not, looking for those best business cases. However, when you have that a little bit messier environment, they are looking for, or at least they already have in their minds those business cases, because they have been limited to do many solutions with data. So sometimes it's scary, to get to a place where it's like, I don't know what to do with all this data, and you have to be prepared to be thinking about other things that were not taught in the academic world. So you need to be thinking about data governance. Not that you have to do data governance on you, it depends on the company, but think that this is more about, not only about ownership, but more about collaboration, stewardship, etc. We need to have professional thinking about data catalogs and being able to track every data source that we have, and if there's any need to process or anything that is going to be overlapping, you need to resolve that. And my final advice here would be just to prioritize value to the business. But you will not be able to do this, again, if you don't get that knowledge of your domain and that expertise. I'm going to conclude really quickly, talking about how I want us to change the paradigm of what a data scientist is, which is that traditional thought of, only those 3 skills: statistics, programming, domain. I want us to think about all those soft skills that we have covered today that are as equally important as those hard skills. We need to be thinking about, let's say, let's mention some of those visual that we have there. So the chameleon, you need to be able to, change how you speak to your audience and just have that transformative ability. You need to be thinking like the phoenix, which is the symbol of resilience. So it's just like every time that you get those setbacks and that you feel frustrated, you just need to go on again. And the last one, so that book, Storytelling Again, just really want to conclude really fast because I'm over my time. But I just want you to really embrace these concepts. I feel that if we are able to pass this to our teams and make them feel, supported to get there to that true unicorn that we're thinking of, we are helping all of our teams to navigate all those challenges that we get from the data-driven transition. And thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this talk, and I'm happy to answer any question you may have.